Hello and welcome everybody back to Painting with Mandy on Mondays. My name is Mandy Tice. I'm the director of the School of Atelier Arts, and welcome to our art class today. Today we're going to continue working on how to paint lace. How is it that we're actually looking at a painting that is 2D and making something like lace feel textural, three-dimensional, etc., etc. So this was originally intended to be a one-day lesson, but we've been slowly crawling our way. This is now our third day on it, and we've done some things already that are going to set us up for success with painting this lace, and we are going to continue refining what we have done. Please make sure to say hello in the chat. If you enjoy these free lessons, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give us a like, thumbs up, ring the bell, all the things that you're supposed to do if you like a channel. I look forward to continuing an art journey with all of you. So last week we, worked on shape, and we talked about how shape was a really important part of making lace feel like lace. We also talked a little bit about edge work, how when we meet two colors, it can affect the way a fabric feels. And today what we're going to do is we're just going to get the rest of this covered. And because this side is now dry, we can start putting a second pass on there. So I'm just going to briefly review what we did in the previous classes, get this covered, and then we're going to go into it. It's going to be surprising. I hope that you guys are all impressed and surprised because when you get the canvas covered, sometimes that's the biggest secret to getting things to look right. Because what happens is when we have all this white canvas underneath here, it is a distraction and it skews our perception of color, shape, all the things, right? So getting our canvas covered is often kind of the most important thing that we can do to help us be better painters or to solve visual problems. Please go ahead and say hello in the chat. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Ellen and Leola. Welcome back. So happy to have you all here. We have lots of states represented so far. I love hearing where you're all from, especially those of you who might be on the other side of the world and it's the middle of the night there. I always really appreciate that you're willing to stay up late to learn a little art with me. Welcome, Carolyn. So good to have you here. Okay, so let's just jump into it because I want to get this covered. I keep yapping and yapping and yapping about other things, and we have not gotten this covered yet. So my number one goal in the next 10 minutes, do you think I can cover it in 10 minutes? We still have to mix up our paint here. So, we had talked previously, please check out, they're available on the YouTube channel if you missed our previous lessons. Because I'm just going to mix this and I'm not going to talk as much about it, but we talked about mixing this neutral green in the previous lessons. So whenever I identify a color like green, I like to make the green first. And then the opposite of green on the color wheel is red, which is what I'm going to use to neutralize the green. And then I'm going to adjust it with white as needed or black as needed, because some of this, especially down here, is going to be darker. So we'll make our dark one first. So I'm going a little more quickly than I usually do because I wanted to focus on the lace, and we've already talked quite a bit about mixing these colors already. So we'll do that. And good morning, Magritte. So glad to have you here. All right. Happy day. Happy painting day. Happy Monday to everybody. I love starting the week out with what I think is most important. And to me, painting is the most important thing, right? And it's so wonderful to be able to share this with all of you, through Facebook or on YouTube, or I just started streaming to Twitch too. So those of you who may be on Twitch, I especially want to hear from you because I have no idea what I'm doing on Twitch. So, but if you're there, please say hello. I'm curious to see if there's people on Twitch that like to learn painting. Okay, and now I'm going to take a little bit of this and get my light color in. Boop. I mean, that's the fun thing is I just got the software that will stream to lots of places, and I'm like, wow, because every community has different people in it, that are there for all sorts of different reasons. All right, so we have a light color, we have a dark color. I think I need a medium color. And again, the red is neutralizing. A lot of people mix greens and they're wondering why their paint looks cartoony, but it's because almost no color is a pure chroma note. Almost all colors are slightly neutralized. And if you get in the habit of neutralizing your colors just a little bit, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by how much more realistic those colors feel when they're on your canvas. I once had an instructor that said every color has a red, a yellow, and a blue. And that's just another way of saying that every color is slightly neutralized because red, yellow, and blue together make a gray, a neutral gray. So, you know, by looking for how much red versus how much yellow, how much blue, you're always going to get a slightly neutralized color if all three are present. Okay. All right, so I'm going to quickly just fill in some of these areas and get them knocked out, right? So this down here, I'm going to need a lot more paint. You know, I just want to get this canvas covered already. I keep saying that every time we get together to paint, and then I like start talking about this concept or that concept, and we haven't got our canvas covered yet. I'm determined today that we're going to cover this canvas. I think that needs a touch more red in it. Please don't be shy about asking questions in the chat. I do try to keep a good close eye on what's going on there. I always want to make sure that when people walk away from my classes, they always know exactly what we were doing, why we were doing it, and how they can recreate it at home. You know, I believe in education. I believe that, you know, anybody can learn how to paint. I know that. I teach people to paint all over the world every week. So anybody can learn how to paint that has access to somebody that has the skill set you're looking for. You know, this isn't magic to paint realistically, but it is training with somebody that knows these skills. You know, sometimes people get frustrated. They're like, oh, I just can't paint. I took a painting class once. Well, did you take a painting class with somebody that had the specific skill set? Could they paint the way that you were trying to learn how to paint? If not, the problem wasn't you. It was an instructor that didn't have the skill set you were looking for. That might have been too much white. Again, we're just trying to get this knocked out. We can always do a second pass on this, but today's lesson isn't about the clothing. Today's lesson is about the lace specifically. So, you know, we can always come back and do a second pass on the clothing another time. But I do want it covered because I don't want this white area of the canvas messing with my perception of my other colors. That's what messes people up, including myself. I do not want to be messed up today. I want to make a perfect painting with all of you. Sometimes perfect gets a bad rap in our contemporary world, right? Like, you know, you don't have to be perfect or whatever, but sometimes aspiring for perfection is what it takes to really learn how to paint realistically. If you go into this painting saying, oh, good enough, like I'm kind of doing down here, right? At some point I need to come into this and be like, no, it's going to be right to get it right. You know, you don't want to always be saying good enough, but you also want to be prioritizing what it is that you're working on and why. So I always like to start out the lesson like, what are we doing today? Today we're covering the canvas and getting this lace set up finally. And that means I don't want to get distracted by the drapery down here. I just want to put a first pass of this drapery so that I have some color on my canvas so it doesn't distract me. Getting a slight bit of glare. I'm just going to rotate my canvas a little bit here. I've been in an epic battle. This is a new studio for me, and I've been in a battle with my son for since I moved in here, just working on different things to get it settled. I'm close. I'm close. Okay. Okay. Look at us getting canvas covered today. And again, we can always come back in here. But today isn't drapery day. Today is lace day. All right. So just like we talked about last week, there's a few different things that are going to help us make the lace feel like lace. One of them is shape. And our first shape problem is when this lighter colored lace meets our darker colored fabric here. So, I have some of this darkness that's actually the same color as what I just laid down here, kind of coming up and in. So we don't even have an edge there. It's what we call a dissolved edge. So we're just going to throw that in to mark it. We have some darkness. This lace is casting a shadow on the fabric underneath it. And we want to work on this shape. So it's not even. This darkness isn't an outline. It's fatter on one side than it is on the other, and we want to be mindful of that. Like it's skinny on this side, fatter on this side because of the direction of the light. So this would be considered a shape issue. People see skinny shadows and they're like, oh, it's a line. They're not lines, they're skinny shapes, right? So we want to be mindful that we are painting skinny shapes that have variation to them and not think of them as lines. Lines tend to have equal distance on both sides. Shapes change the thickness throughout, and that's what makes it feel believable compared to, genericizing it. Okay, look at us getting canvas covered today. I'm super proud of us. We are going to get it covered today. I'm just trying to make sure there's no white spots sticking out. We don't want to deal with that right now. Okay, voila. Now I'm going to do the same with the collar. I'm going to make sure to really meet everything up. Oh, and we have some comments from our Twitch friends. Kendrell9, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. Oh, it's so kind of you to be here and join us. Okay, excellent. I'm still figuring out all the Discord situation, so that's going to be a new level for me, but I will work on that. Okay, so we are going to continue filling in this space. There is some slight variation. So we do have, some shadow that's already been kind of put in here. It's darker and more neutral, and then it's getting lighter. And then there's some other variation in here, but it's so subtle that I'm going to do what we did over here. I'm going to kind of fill it in all at once, and then we'll add subtleties on top of it. So I'm going to go ahead and just work on filling this. Now, when we look at this, it's tempting to say, oh, this is a white collar. I'm just going to paint the whole thing in white. But what's actually happening is that the color is a slightly neutralized, maybe value 2. So if you have a value scale from 1 to 9, where 9 is the darkest and 1 is the lightest, like a 2-ish is, it's darker than the 1. The 1 is the pure white. So this is like 2, even 3 in some areas. So if we paint it a little bit darker, if we get the idea of white out of our head and instead paint it as, oh, it's a neutralized value 2.5 maybe, what that allows us to do is when we do have these highlighted bits of white on top, they show up because they're on something darker. We're going to see that very clearly in just a minute. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in the rest of this color, and then I'm going to show you what I'm talking about by putting some pure white on top of this underpainting that we have here, because this isn't a pure white. This is a value 2, and it's really going to show up and make a difference. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and mix kind of this neutralized white. So obviously I'm going to start with white. And I have some other neutralized colors on my palette. I can just take some of this other neutralized color I had, put that in. Oh, that doesn't feel too bad. It might be a touch warmer, so I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow in here. Okay, voila. We have something that looks decent, and we'll see how it looks on the canvas. There's always a jump between what you're doing on your palette and what it looks like when it actually jumps to your canvas here. All right, so let's see how we really feel about it when it's on our canvas. Okay, that's okay, especially for this part. It's a little darker here as it pulls out. I think it needs a touch of warmth, so I'm going to get a little bit of orange on my brush and mix that into my neutral here. I was just feeling a little cold. Keep in mind that when I say warm and cool, sometimes people think, oh, cool colors are blue and purple and whatever, green, and warm colors are orange, yellow, red. But that's a lie. That is not actually true. Let me know in the chat if you've heard that before. That warm colors are red, orange, yellow, and cool colors are green, blue, purple. What is true is that every color is both warm and cool depending on what you're comparing it to, right? So this green here is warm or cool. Like when I add red to it, we would call it a warmer green, right? And this green here is warmer than this green here, which has a cooler undertone. But they're both green. They're both neutralized greens that are very similar in color, but this one is warmer than that one. So every color is both warm and cool. It just matters what you are relating it to. If you want more information on that, the School of Atelier Arts has a great set of color theory worksheets. So if what I just said confuses you, we have 50 worksheets that like drill you on color theory and help you see like these really small increments of change in color and help teach you that. And you can find that at our store at the School of Atelier Arts. And Leo is saying, yes, I've heard that. And yeah, especially in the classroom, a lot of the textbooks, so I'm a licensed art teacher myself, and a lot of the textbooks that we have in our classrooms are spewing this nonsense that is actually not true, right? And a lot of that is because technical art training fell out of favor for the last century because it was believed that it would ruin student creativity. And the result of that is by not teaching the technical aspects of art for a century, we now have very confusing, mismatched information that is often put into textbooks and is wrong, right? It is a wrong statement. That is modern painters without classical training, like giving their interpretation of what they think warm and cool is. That has nothing to do with what warm and cool colors have meant for hundreds of years for painters, right? So it's just one of those things that, when you throw out technical knowledge in a field, that's the result, is that you get misinformation or misinterpreted information that they read from sources that came 200 years ago, and they think that they understand them and they don't. It drives me crazy, like I'm constantly trying to correct. And it's not art teachers' faults. Like that's what they've been trained, right? But it's just that the technical aspects of art have been so neglected for the last 100 years that we don't even really know anymore. Oh, thanks, Magritte. Magritte's saying that she's done the color theory worksheets and she found them helpful and illuminating. Thank you. I'm glad that they're actually useful. I don't want to bother making resources that don't actually help people. And I found that like really honing in on just one concept and having students practice it and then build it with other concepts is the fastest way to help students learn how to paint realistically. So that's why we have the worksheets on color theory. That's why we have the worksheets on portrait drawing. We just really try to isolate one concept at a time, and then you can build them together. If you do the portrait worksheets and the color theory worksheets, then in theory, you can do a colored portrait, right? Okay. So, right, Mandy, focus. We're covering this. We're trying to get this whole piece covered more or less, because it's going to mess with us if we don't. All right. So this is slightly darkish, and it does get a little bit lighter as it pulls out into this other area. Okay, so I'm going to mix up a slightly lighter version, a little bit warmer. Still not using pure white. I'm mixing up my white into my neutral and into that little bit of orange that I had on my palette here. Oh, and it looks like we could go even lighter. remember that when you paint on top of something, it's going to pick up the color underneath it. So sometimes you have to overshoot the color you're going for to get it to land where you actually want it. So, you can mix colors perfectly on your palette, or sometimes what I'm doing right now is mixing on my canvas. So I'm painting over and allowing with intention what's underneath to be picked up on my brush. Okay. Now I'm meeting these edges. Now, if I were painting just for me and this wasn't a demo, I would be like just really aggressively working on the shape of each of these edges. But because this is a demo, I want to focus on one concept at a time. Right now, that concept is thinking about our whites and how we mix whites. So I'm going to finish this concept of whites, and then we're going to go in and adjust these shapes here in a more specific way. But do you see how just having the shadow of the white lace on this cloth here and the shape of the lace, even though it still needs refined, do you see how this is suddenly looking like there's a cloth on top of another cloth just because we didn't outline the lace with a black line? We used thicknesses of line on one side and thought of them as shape instead of line. And do you see how already we're getting the illusion of the lace laying on top? Excellent. Oh, and McCree's saying she's doing the composition worksheets now too. We just released the composition worksheets like a couple weeks ago, so they're brand new. I always love getting feedback on those. The composition worksheets are more for setting up your own projects. Right now, we're working on a master copy, which is also a very valuable experience. But if you've ever set up your own paintings and you didn't like the way they looked at the end, it's almost always a composition issue, right? You can paint beautifully, but if you have a really bad composition, it's still going to feel ugly to you. Okay, so just finishing this out here. Doesn't it feel good? Don't you just feel relief having this canvas covered? I do. I feel so much better. All right, we have something down here. And we have some darkness that's sneaking up there. All right, so there's some transition happening here with this lace. Has more warmth in it. Sometimes you can think warm or cool, but sometimes it also helps to think about in what way it's warm and cool. I was just on Art School Live where my friend Ricky Mojica was giving a demonstration, and I was guest hosting for Art School Live. And he was talking about, don't just think warm and cool, think about is it orangier or greener? So, or is it purplier? Instead of saying warm and cool, try to identify towards which hue it needs to lean. And then it's not quite so confusing. I thought that was a really interesting insight from Ricky. It's fun in the atelier world now that it's, become the countercultural movement in art. Lots of people are interested in learning it. It's really experiencing a wonderful renaissance right now. I mean, it's fun that you guys are all here watching this with me today. That's a sign of the Renaissance, in my opinion, that we have so many people around the world kind of joining and learning about atelier training and realism training and trying to save these skills that were nearly lost, to history. Okay, we can work a little bit more on the shape aspect of things now. We have the big idea in, and just, working on refining some of this. And there's a little bit of uncovered canvas here too. Okay. All right, so we don't have a ton of time to work, so I want to just really focus on one area, and I want to work on this area that is pseudo dry already, because I want to show you how we can when we put this brighter light on top, it's really going to give us that effect. And then also this painting was done with a little bit of dry brushing here, and that's what's giving it some of that textured lace effect. And because this underpainting is dry, we're able to do that now. Leola's saying that she downloaded all last week and I'm looking forward to going over them. That's wonderful. I'm so happy. I love making these worksheets because they're so functional and useful. And a lot of people tell me, oh, I don't have time to learn how to go to an atelier for 10 hours a day or whatever. And I'm like, you don't need 10 hours a day. You need a little bit of time every day. And the worksheets are meant to, be like little exercises that you can spend 5-10 minutes on a day, kind of like if you do Duolingo and practice your language. Painting is just a language. If you practice it a little bit every day, you'll get better at it. Okay, so we're going to work on this area. I do see that we need to adjust up here just a touch. All right, so now I'm going to get more careful layering this down. I want to be, as mindful as possible of the shapes, the colors. I might need to get some fresh white on my palette. My white's getting kind of dirty. So I needed to warm it up a little bit. Keep in mind that colors don't function in isolation. We have this nice warm skin tone over here that's bouncing some of that warmth into the collar. It's really, Velázquez really knew what he was about. Some people consider Velázquez the first Impressionist painter, which the first time I heard that, I thought was completely insane. But the more I study his works, the more I see where those people are coming from, because he had a real sensitivity to color, to the impression of things. He didn't draw and paint every single little hole in the lace, right? He gave us the impression of the lace, which in some ways feels even more lace-like than the lace itself. And that's really, becoming my definition of Impressionism is, can you create the impression of something? Can you make it more of the thing that it is than even your eyes see it when you're looking at the original object? All right, so kind of imbuing a little bit of this warmth in here. I think I even need a little bit more red in there. It really is a nice warm, especially right around here, because it's reflecting that skin tone into the painting. Okay, and we have, this warmth really extends down a little bit. We have a tiny, I don't even want to call it a shadow, but just a little bit of a darker note over here. That's kind of creating the feeling of the fold. I think that was a little too dark. Let's lighten it a little bit. No, that's too light. Somewhere in between, please, Mandy. I like to talk to myself when I paint. All right, and there's like a little bridge here. Do you see how we feel that the collar is cutting across here, but there's actually a dissolved edge right here where we can't really tell where the skin tone ends and the collar begins. So I want to make sure that I'm including a transitional note like that. I don't want this harsh edge. And do you see how that one note kind of dissolved that edge and created that link between the skin tone and our collar there? So, edge work can make or break a painting, being mindful of what's going on. We have two colors that are meeting, but how are they meeting? How they meet is just as important as getting the two colors right. Need a clean cloth here. Okay. All right, so I'm looking at this area here. I see I'm going to need some fresh white. Do you see how my white got dirty? And I can keep trying to dig around it and convincing myself it's close enough, but it's not. Like if you find yourself compromising, like sometimes students will run out of a color on their palette and then just try to get by without using that color, and then all of a sudden their whole painting skews green or whatever because they were out of red. You can always tell. But in this case, my white is dirty and I'm trying to keep making it work with dirty white, but I'm painting a white object. I really need some clean white on my palette. So I'm going to do that. Do you see the difference? How bright this white is compared to my dirty white? And you don't think it's that big of a deal because your eyes get accustomed to how dirty your white is until you put fresh white out. Here's a little trick too. So my brush was dirty. So what I did is I take a little bit of white and just kind of mush it in, and it kind of helps brighten my brush a little bit. Okay, so I need to lighten some of these areas, and I'm dry brushing because that's what's giving us kind of this textural effect. And um, some of this is wet now up here, but when I dry brush down here, do you see what a nice textural effect is happening, kind of giving us that lace vibe? Because it's allowing a little bit of that undercolor to shine through. It's creating the illusion of all those holes in lace without actually having to paint each of those holes. And this is what happens when we get the underpainting the right color, is that when we use our pure white on top, it's actually showing up, right? I'm going to shove you guys like really, really close into this just so you can see. I know what the camera tends to do, especially when it's looking at whites, is average them all together and make it look like one white, when actually there's a ton of variation in what's going on here. So I'm going to pull the camera up really, really tight for a second so you guys can really see. If I can. I'm tethered to the wall right now. I'm going to have to change plugs, I think, to get you that close. Hold on. I'm just going to unplug. It'll be okay. We'll survive. All right. So do you guys see how that white is really showing up on top of that slightly dirty undercolor, right? So it's this kind of nuance that's really going to help us get the effect of the lace. Leo says it's okay if I talk to myself. Just don't argue. That's the hard part. Then you get the two artist Mandys in your head and you're like, no, do the shape next. No, teach the, warm and cool colors next. Right? There's so much going on there. All right. Where did I put my palette? All right, let's get you guys turned back around here. Okay, so we kind of have the colors, but it's really this edge needs some work, and a little bit of dry brushing while thinking about the shape is going to help us. So for example, there's a little bit of a dry brush coming out here. Oh, I got it dirty. I might need to let it dry. I forgot that I had put some shadow under there and it got in my brush, but that's okay. We got it. I actually want a little bit of dirtiness up here. Now, when people see something like this, there's a slight dark with light around it. And the temptation is for students to get their pure black and stick it in there. But even though there's a lot of contrast, it's only a lot of contrast because the white is so bright. And this is actually a middle value dark. It's not your black in there. If you make it black, that's when it starts looking like a cartoon. Should probably get a smaller brush at this point. This is probably too big for this. You want brushes that are proportionate to the problem you're trying to solve. And this one's a little fat. So let's go to a skinnier brush. All right. Now, this is when you can really get sucked into a particular area. So I'm kind of looking at this area. I'm realizing that we don't have a clean shadow underneath that could really help us define this area. Um, Keep note, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's very subtle, but there's a place where the lace, which is kind of slightly transparent, is meeting the cloth underneath, and it's actually a little bit orangey in color there. This is the type of color note that is the difference between amateur work and professional work. Seeing these kind of small nuances here, right? And do you see how that makes the lace look transparent? Who would have thought that putting orange when you have white lace on a green cloth, that orange is what's going to make that lace look transparent, right? So these are the types of interesting little problem solving, tasks that we have as painters. And it's these little things that are starting to give us a lace effect. So the shape helps us give lace effect. The transitions, seeing the color in the transitions, not just putting white on black, finding the color within the white, because there's no such thing as white. White is just a really, really light value, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, or purple. And we cover that in the worksheets too. So I strongly recommend checking those out. Sometimes having a strong theoretical understanding of color theory can be an immediate improvement in how you mix colors on your palette. This has some red in it, this dark. As much as possible, try never to think about black and white as black or white. Think of it as, oh, this is a really dark value red. This is a really light value blue. Because then it'll help you find it. Again, a little bit of that orange in between the collar, the white of the collar and the fabric underneath. So this line is bothering me because I drew it as a line, but it's not a line. It's actually a shape that has a really specific shape to it. And, it's slightly curved, it's skinnier on top. Oh, I lost it all together. Now I have to go back to the dark. It's fatter down here, it's skinnier at the top. It has a specific angle to it that we want to be mindful of. Got a little angly here. It's a little more vertical. It got a little long. I might have to wait for the paint to dry. There's a lot of wet paint on here right now. But, something to adjust when it's a little drier. Give it one more attempt, but there's a lot of paint down now. What do they say in the military? Sometimes valor is the braver part of, or live to fight another day, right? Like if you're fighting the shape because you have so much wet paint down when you could make it very easily when it's dry, like save that problem for a different day, right? Oops. All right. We're just gonna continue. I'm just kind of thinking along this edge here, and this dark kind of pops up a little bit here, which kind of gives it a fun little gesture. I kind of think like this looks like a mountain range, but it's a specific mountain range. Let's make sure that we know which one it is by making it as most like we see as we can. And again, we have a tiny bit of this orangey transition that's just barely visible. And it's only in some places. What you don't want to do is, oh, there's an orange transition, and then just go blindly following up and down. It only appears in some places. So you only want it to appear where it's supposed to go, and you don't want it to be where it's not supposed to be. And so that requires some, careful looking. Okay, this over here, I mean, this shape got messed up. This dark extends. And I don't think the light goes this low either. Part of it appears I've lost the drawing coming through here. So I'm going to restate this drawing a little bit. Again, because this is wet, it's probably not going to hold too much until it dries and I can restate it, but just enough to get some reference for what's going on with the lace. And we have kind of this coming around here. Just trying to give a little bit of reference. It has a lot of wet paint underneath it, but we can see it and we can darken it once it dries. Okay. And hello, Rob. Welcome. Glad to have you here. So just checking the chat for some questions. I've been kind of in my own world here. So Leo is saying, watching you paint, that stroke had me holding my breath like I was in the adventure part of a movie. It is so satisfying when something is just a little off and then you put just the right thing down and then all of a sudden like all the puzzle pieces like lock together. I don't know, like some people are like, I don't know how you sit in your studio and paint all day. Aren't you bored? And I'm like, what are you doing with your life? This is the most exciting thing I can do in a day. Like when it locks in that way, I love it. Okay. So working across here, I hope if anything that you guys take away that it's a process that you try to get it as close as you can and you continue to tighten it as you go. And to keep track of where you are as well. So it looks like this got a little high and that I need to lower that. It's really, especially when you have something repeating itself, like boom, 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 boom. It's really easy to be looking at this one, but painting it over here, right? So you want to make sure that you're referencing the right one and that what you're looking at here is the one that you're actually working on over here. It's really common for students to be like looking at this one and then start painting it all the way over here, right? It takes a little bit of visual memory to develop to really get it straight. And welcome, Edie. So happy to have you back. It's so fun. I love that we have this little community here that like gets together and it's fun getting to know each of you a little bit. It's fun to paint together. I am a social painter. I do not like being alone in my studio. I invite my neighbors over to talk to me when I paint. Like I really enjoy painting around other people. Some of my friends tell me I'm doing it wrong, that I'm supposed to be a recluse hiding in my studio, but that's just not how I roll. Okay, so just kind of redefining the shape a little bit, and it's going to be a little bit of push-pull. Now it got a little short before it was too tall. Some of these really bright white notes are going to have to be built up in a couple layers over time. Again, a little bit of that orange magic note coming through here. When I started this, I would have never guessed that there were these little orange notes happening. Not in a million years, right? Even though it was right in front of my face the whole time. That's what's so much fun about doing a master copy. You can learn so much about painting. I've been painting full time for over a decade now, and I just learned that when white meets green, you can have little orange bits to transition them. Oh, that's so sweet. Rob's saying that we're all pleased to your social so we can learn from you, Mandy. Oh, thank you. I love it. I love having this group. I love, teaching and streaming. And I also love our online Atelier Bootcamp class. It's really wonderful to be able to teach everybody, that has access to the internet. We can watch this together. But also, a lot of Atelier training is getting that feedback from an Atelier trained instructor. And so, when I'm teaching online to, our online bootcamp class, what you're really getting is that feedback from somebody whose eye is trained a little bit better than yours. So if you're enjoying these classes and you're making progress in your painting and you're really ready to take it to the next level, I hope you'll consider joining us in our online bootcamp class. We also have a great community in there that is very social, very kind, very supportive, and will help you get where you want to go. And welcome, Rita. Happy to have you from Germany. It's never too late to join us painting, Rita. I'm so glad you joined us. Oh, well, I love teaching. It's a great joy for me. People ask me, "Oh, do you like teaching or painting more?" And I'm like, who's your favorite child? Like, how do you pick which one you like more? I've been a teacher for a long time. I'm licensed as an art teacher in the United States. And it's really been a part of me to, even when I was learning atelier training, I had always intended to teach it, right? So as I was learning, anytime I learned something new, I would like write it down, write a lesson plan about it, make a slide lesson about it, make some worksheets about it, just something, because I wanted to remember how I learned everything. Sometimes atelier trained instructors, they learned it, but they don't remember how they learned it. And then they're like, oh, just do it. And then they'll tell you, nope, not that. Nope, not that. But what I really try to do is explain how to learn each aspect of it. Yeah, exactly, Edie. I don't have to choose. I can have it all. It's the 21st century. I can have it all. Well, thank you, Rita. I really appreciate you. Especially a German telling me that she thinks that I'm great. That's the greatest compliment in the world because of all the Germans I've ever met, they're the most like direct. They will tell you exactly, and they will never white lie you ever. I'm stereotyping all of Germans now, but it's much appreciated, Rita. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Yeah, I love that there's so many art teachers in this community that are, that aren't just settling for what they already know and want to teach, that are, wanting to take their teaching to the next level, are willing to invest in themselves and their art and take that risk, right? Especially when you are an art teacher, it can be really scary to be like, oh, I don't know this particular thing yet, right? So I have so much respect for the art teachers that are interested in atelier training, and especially because, I have an art education degree. I didn't learn any of this in art education school, not at university. And atelier training largely lives outside the university system, right? And so if you have a degree and you're teaching, like I left the profession, moved across the country to train in an atelier, and I wish so much that something was available, for me to train online with at the time. And now just, 15 years later, here we are where you have access to an atelier trained instructor, whether you're in Germany or Canada or wherever you are, that you can learn from. We give critiques twice a week in our online atelier, and I give critiques, written critiques in between those times if you ever get stuck. And it's amazing what consistent feedback in your art can do for your growth as a painter. I love watching my students just like blow up in their skills. It's great. It's the coolest thing. I'm so proud of them. Um, okay. All right. So we are almost out of time today. I did get it covered today. I've been trying to do that for the last 3 lessons. I think we'll do one more lesson because this will all be dry and we can just like really go into the nitty-gritty here, as we do one last day on the lathe. And then I'm going to break up the face. Like one day we'll talk about painting the nose or painting the lips, and we'll just kind of break it down one by one. Now, typically, I don't believe in doing it that way because I believe in looking holistically. But because this is like a once a week class, I just really want to hone in on doing one concept at a time and just giving a little bit of information about each. So we'll do one more day on the lace, and then we'll start tackling the features one at a time. Oh, I'm so happy to stream, Rob. You're quite welcome. Okay. All right. I'm going to call it there for today. We got it covered. Really, there's too much paint on my canvas to really get these shapes tight. So that's going to be a next week problem for us. And then we'll just keep picking away at it one at a time. All right. Again, please make sure to join our newsletter. We give all of our best free resources, information about when I'm streaming, if I'm doing bonus streaming, it all goes out through our newsletter. You can join at schoolofatelierarts.com. At the top, there's a little banner there to join the newsletter. So please make sure to do that. If you're interested in the worksheets, you can find those at schoolofatelierarts.com on our shop at the website. And if you're interested in like more serious atelier training, if you're ready to take what you're learning in these Monday classes and take it to the next level, please consider our online painting bootcamp. And if you have any questions about that, you can always write me at mandy@schoolofatelierarts.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Oh, thank you, Leola. So glad to have you here. I'm so glad to see everybody. It's a delight to have you as always, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Cheers, everybody.